Hi everybody, it's the show with Ron, right here from the beach with the roaring surf. It's the morning and we're checking to see how Biden did with his State of the Union address. As we know, a lot of people were watching this. I'm sure the Republicans were with anticipation, but it was mainly the Democrats who were signaling their worries that Biden needs to show energy instead of his typical kind of weak way of it's saying an old man's way of speaking, very light. And apparently he was a changed man, and I saw it, and yeah, it's a rip roaring exciting speech. I mean, I realize people who are quite old and maybe a little doddery can get themselves up to do a speech like this. It sounded really good. I mean, I wonder if he got any special shots to pep him up for this, or we'd ever know about it. It was a good speech with a lot of good points. Particularly this idea of working together and how the Republicans, towards the end of his term, this first term here, Biden has, you would say, flip-flopped on some issues and has had some different policies on the border, some different policies on the economy, maybe a kind of a compromise on Trump's corporate tax cuts that he put in place in 2017. And some of these probably should have been accepted by the Republicans, but they voted down some of their own issues just to deny Biden a win. And Biden was calling the Republicans out on that. Now, as I mentioned yesterday, we know that usually State of the Unions don't mean much, or they don't show us much. They just indicate how slick a politician can be. And you listen to any of the State of the Union from Clinton or George W. Bush or Obama. They had a lot of them because they were both all two-term presidents, and they all sound very good and statesmanlike. But in terms of substantive indications of how they're doing, or of how the presidency is doing. There were low times during Clinton's presidency, low times during Bush's presidency, but you just put on a brave face and show you're the leader of the free world during the speech and say all the right things that show you're the commander-in-chief of the most powerful nation in the world. So it usually doesn't tell much. Except, occasionally, in this case with Biden, where people were watching to see, could he even do it? So I'm sure this will, many of the Democrats who put all their eggs now in this basket of Biden will say, well, the issue is settled. Biden he's not too old. The number 81 is not too old to run for president, so now we're fine. But we still have a lot of months and a lot of times for Biden that has to speak extemporaneously and off the cuff. And, certainly the State of the Union was an anomaly. He doesn't act like this most of the time. He drank from the fountain of youth or something. So we'll have to see if he's able to maintain this. But he certainly right now is at a high point, and Trump, with having to post bond to over 90 million now to pay some lady for defamation. America has those huge numbers when you get into court for punitive damages that most countries don't have, because it's ridiculous. But anyway, here's another thing. Biden says Netanyahu needs come to Jesus moment. This is, I don't believe this. See, I believe this is not a hot mic moment. This is not an accidental over here. This is put out very carefully, very importantly, because they know that Americans in general are not interested in supporting Israel on this, or probably any foreign wars. So it's another bit of a flip-flop that they have to do to show Americans that they're not giving Israel just a blank check to kill Palestinians. Really, I do admit, certainly social media and a lot of stupid people in the United States who suddenly decide they dislike Israel or even hate Jews. This is ridiculous. And that's one part of the issue. But another part of it is Israel's fault. They're probably going to win a lot of battles, but lose the war in the way they've conducted themselves in attacking Hamas in Gaza and removing them there. They certainly know how closely countries are scrutinized when they conduct wars, like when the United States is bombing some other country all the time, all the way back 30 years ago to Iraq and all the way to the present. At every moment, the media is going to want to play up that you're indiscriminately bombing children because you're racist and hate the people, etc., etc. So Israel should have known to conduct that war in a better, a more media-friendly way. But I don't blame them. In a way, even what happened to Iraq and Afghanistan through America's possibly failed invasions, but the lesson is that if you come and attack a country, that bigger country is going to completely destroy you. You're going to awake the sleeping giant, as I think that was a movie line, and that giant's going to crush you. So you better be careful about attacking a much more powerful foe. You're going to lose your own country, your own base of power. Job growth, of course. All this stuff you hear about how great the economy is, now it's been way too long since we've had a recession. They usually happen towards the end of every decade. We have one at least, sometimes more than that, a slowdown of several quarters of negative growth. But because of all this money creation and cheap money and bloating the U.S. debt, and now in this year, this election year, we have gamed the Fed to whoops, what happened to my window? To make sure that, to ensure that the Fed has some preset rate decreases, or they won't increase rates this year in the election year, to guarantee that there will be no economic dip during this precious election, where we've said that Trump is a danger to a democracy and everything. It's the most important election, and yet they've hinged it all on this very elderly man who we also have a lot of doubts about. This is I just keep thinking, I disagree with a lot of the Biden policies, but I also think that Trump is not the person of character to be president in the way he's conducted himself. And if it is so important to defeat Trump, why do they put up such a weak and iffy, why do they put all their eggs in the basket of Biden? Very, very, very strange. Okay, here we have Trump posting 91 million bond. We've got, Trump is opposing this TikTok ban. The Republicans support it. As I was talking about yesterday, I'm not sure exactly that I really see anywhere other than China owns it, and they might have information about browsing habits. I'm not clear how that is a danger, what they're alluding to. I'm thinking, could it be that there's some sort of a weird backdoor in TikTok that at a certain time they could infect or shut down people's phones? I don't know. I just like them to hear to say exactly what is this issue that Facebook can know if you're over or under 13 Google can know that, but yet a Chinese company can't. It's my morning Coke. I was going to watch this. I haven't watched it yet. Megyn Kelly, Why Did Drudge Turn? So in one of, I think in my very first video, I talked about this. Like, why do I focus on Drudge here? Drudge here was a very early internet page. Still looks like an early internet page. It looks like a GeoCities page. Just a bunch of links. This was before we had big search engines like Google and Yahoo. So you relied on people who would collect up links that they would find around on a kind of directory page. So by putting up these all these links of interesting stories, a lot of news outlets around the world, and up to this day, which is now 25 years later, maybe 27, 28 years later, they rely on this to point out some interesting stories that they might have missed, or that might be interesting to people or have mass appeal. Drudge, or whoever's running it now, just had an eye for doing that sort of thing. So in the early days, Drudge really came on the scene when it was proved by Drudge that the internet, which was just a goofy bulletin board thing for nerds, could rival bricks and mortar media outlets. And this was because the bricks and mortar media outlet had decided among themselves that they were not going to cover or report on certain news but that the White House didn't want them to, and that was Monica Lewinsky. Just a blackout. Yeah, it's just that, it's a guy having an affair with one of his employees, allegedly, who knows. It's none of our business. He's a Democrat, he's doing what we want to do. Well, Drudge kept pressing these stories on his little webpage, and he eventually forced this story out into public, and he forced the media to deal with it. And I think people don't really remember this history of Drudge right now, but that was, for a long time, I bet 10 or 15 years, if I was looking at Drudge and then all my employees, who were all super liberal, would see me, they would just snarl because everybody hated Drudge on the left, because that was the news outlet that ruined Clinton. They didn't abide by what the big boys were telling that they should report to the people, and so for a long time Drudge was seen as an ultra right wing, and the stories would be of that bent that would play up the foibles of the left, and after a while I think it began a little more centrist. And when it came to when Trump was going to be elected the first time in 2016, it seemed, though, that Drudge went back to a kind of kid gloves with Trump and didn't play up the negative aspects of Trump's character, which, he's a character that's very out of keeping with the traditional Republican family values, or the pretense of family values, or conservative values, in the way he conducts himself, in the lies he tells. This was that idea of lying was always the left is spinning things, not the right. And then when it came to 2020, Drudge was much tougher on Trump, and didn't let him get away with those big stories. He didn't present them. And by not presenting them on this page, he's rarely doing any reporting, the Drudge Report itself, but just by presenting them, he's putting them in front of so many eyes. And for years and years, this little single page website was number 1 or 2 or in the top 5 of all web pages looked at, along with Google, that would have millions of views for millions of different reasons. People just came to this for news. So when Drudge puts this on his site, everybody sees it, and especially the people who are a little more right-leaning. So he can tip things. And certainly in this election, through all the last year to now, he certainly has put all the negative stuff about Trump right out there for everybody to see. And so this is a video which maybe I'll watch it and I'll come back and we'll talk about it later, where we're saying in 2016 he kind of treated Trump with kid gloves, and then in 2020 and now here in 2024 they're putting he's showing the right-leaning people all the news that's fit to print about Trump, the good and the mostly bad. Okay. Male robot in Saudi Arabia sparks outrage after groping female news reporter. Okay. Did your chef wash their hands? Hand washing lie detectors could find out. Sounds like a new Seinfeld episode. You remember that guy who didn't wash his hands? That's a show that ended too early. You know, Seinfeld, that's a meme show. They could make a new one and just have endless ideas for the show. In fact, I believe there used to be a Twitter account where people would put one-word concepts for a Seinfeld show, and it was just so many rich ideas. Let's see. Haley, I think we're through with Nikki Haley for now. The surf is loud today, crashing in. We're at high tide here almost. I think we had a lot of news up front today with that Biden State of the Union. I'm not seeing much interesting stuff further down here. What's this one last phone call Biden needs to make? Sometimes the headlines pop on here and I haven't seen what they are when I start doing the show. Let's see what this is. Very slow net here. It's just barely reaching out to the beach. Chief of Staff. That's the phone call. Super important person. I always, still watch the show The West Wing. That's supposed to be very accurate in terms of how people interface there in the upper echelons. The name escapes me of the guy who played, John Spencer maybe, who played the Chief of Staff on that, who died during the show's run. So good. What a great show. If you're a right winger, you may not like the idea of the West Wing as sort of an idealized version of what the Clinton presidency could have or should have been, but it's an endlessly fun watch. I know that the State Department used to send a collection of certain episodes to countries that were trying to implement their own new nascent democracies, and they would send it sort of as like a training to show how you might interact in government. I guess without, sending a bunch of guys with guns on the back of a pickup truck to shoot up the place. London now no-go zone for Jews. You see, this is even maybe more than the United States in the last 6 years, maybe. This kind of very unprecedented open immigration policy where they let many illegal immigrants come in, and they just gave them complete full benefits. And these were people who were not interested in really immigrating or integrating into a new culture, but they were interested in creating their own little zones, their little enclaves where they could continue their possibly repressive ways of living that were outside the norms of the new country they were in. And a lot of countries in Europe are struggling with that. And of course, you don't want to cut off immigration, because the West's great innovation was to divorce the nation state from religion and culture and even ethnicity, to say that a country can be made of all different kinds of people who've come together, and to allow these European countries in America, Australia, to be a beacon of hope for countries where there are people oppressed and want to come and be part of another culture and live a life that they couldn't live in their old, backwards, repressive, non-democratic countries. So we need to get that balance right. You can't have complete open immigration, but you can't cut it off either. Oh, I'm chuckling at the news. You see, part of this my concept is we need to have a little bit of contempt for the news, contempt for the government, because we don't want to get caught up in someone else's fight. We don't want to get caught up in someone else's battle. We want to march in our own parade, and we don't want to go down fighting for somebody else that tries to get us involved in something that maybe doesn't really have anything to do with us. It has to do with them. Boy, in this slide, I really have big bags under my eyes, but I'm really not like that. I don't look too bad. See, that's a little better. I think that's pretty much the news for today. I want to show you something. I wrote a book.
Young people find their dreams and failures in Bangkok, go on to the furthest places in search of something the modern world can no longer give. This is the story of There Are Still Unknown Places, my new novel on sale at Asia Books and on Kindle ebook. It's a tale of a new generation, disillusioned by the promises of the world, wanting to search for their destinies far from places.
My video is a little bit stuttering. We're out here on the edge of the sea. My book is it fits into some of the themes we talk about on the show about being sus, as they say now, to the things that are happening in the world and what people are telling you and what people are trying to get you to do. And in my novel, it's we have young people who are going to the ends of the world, and we have local people who see their world changing, and it's becoming something other than they expected or it was promised to them to be. So I hope you read that book. It's on Amazon. It's in bookstores in Thailand also, and I hope you read it and like it. And I will see you with more news tomorrow. Bye-bye.